DPS, damage per second. Not a term we're hugely obsessed with in Mordhau, as there are many other factors that come into play when choosing a weapon that I think most people would agree are more important. But the idea of DPS does lead us straight onto one of the problems with the Mordhau stats section, which is that for a big number of these weapons, the TBA, or time between attacks, is not specified. For comboable, non-stop weapons, the continuous TBA is simple enough to determine. It is just a combo windup plus release phase. And then DPS is just damage divided by that. But for weapons that can't combo, it is a lot less obvious, since we know we get a shortened recovery phase when we land a successful hit. And therefore windup plus release plus recovery is not the correct way to calculate TBA for successful consecutive hits with these weapons. Nor any of the comboable non-stop weapons that we're not comboing with, for that matter. Here, we are left in the dark. And in the case of the comboable hit stoppers, the combo duration is admittedly specified, but the number hasn't held any meaning in and of itself since patch 22 from September 2021, when the miss combo was first introduced. For the hit stoppers in particular, this change meant you would now either hit someone and then not be able to combo, or you would miss, and then you would get the miss combo slowdown, which is some other more different number that we don't get to know. And the combo windup for hit stoppers has never been directly tied to the minimum TBA anyway. And there are ancient discussion threads buried within the bottomless pits of the web, shedding light on similar, very legitimate questions, but unfortunately not their answers. I'm gonna try to address some of them today. So the question I posed to start untangling this problem was simply, what is the highest possible continuous single target DPS for each attack in the game? There are 34 weapons in Mordhau, half of which have 2 attack types, while the rest have 4 due to their alternative grip. That gives us a total of 102 different attacks, all of which I've compiled in a spreadsheet that you can find on the link down below. Now, you could just jump ahead to the spreadsheet immediately and start reading by yourself, but I would suggest listening on as I try to explain the columns first, and more importantly, the method by which I collected the data, why I decided on using it, and its inherent weaknesses. So, starting on the left and working our way outward, we have the weapons in order of their appearance in the armory, starting with the dagger and ending with the Zweihander. The next 3 columns are just weapon stats that I've pulled from the stats section in the game, so these should all be accurate, save for any typos. And the purpose of these 3 is just to act as base values for mathematical operations in the columns that follow on the right. Hit stopper should also be pretty self-explanatory. If you don't know what that means because you're completely new to the game, then you should watch my tutorial for Mordhau. It's very good, and only 5 minutes long. It won't tell you what a hit stopper is though, I'm sorry. Anyway, combo TBA THEO stands for theoretical combo time between attacks. The theoretical TBA is, like I said before, just a combo windup plus the release phase. And if we pick at the code underneath, we can see that it just adds the value of column C and D together, and that's the output. Unless the weapon has no ability to combo, then it outputs not available instead. So the short spear, as an example, has no combo windup, and therefore no combo TBA. Now we get to column H, which by far and away was the most difficult and tedious to compile. No combo min TBA stands for minimum time between attacks when no combo is utilized. And the EMP within brackets stands for empirical because the only way to figure this value out is through testing. For this I needed a dummy, an unmoving, unkillable opponent, and an awful lot of time. And I need to express sincere thanks to Cornell and Sugoi for assisting me with this part of the process. I started at the top with the dagger and worked my way down to the end. 1 weapon, 1 attack type at a time. Each attack was run through a sequence of 20 consecutive strikes, and the whole process was recorded for later analysis in my NLE of choice, DaVinci Resolve. Once I had a sequence of strikes, the way I calculated the TBA was by finding the first and last frame of impact registration, which is indicated very clearly by the opponent's sudden twitch. This involved some tedious timecode conversion, but at least it wasn't very complicated. Once I had the total time, I just needed to count the number of strikes, subtract 1 to get an equal number of strikes as TBAs, and then divide the total time by that number. Now at this point you might be thinking that, hey, actually you will get closer to the real answer if you single in on just the absolute shortest interval in this sequence. We're not looking for an average, we're looking for the extreme. And you would be right, but that introduces some difficulties as well. Firstly, how do you determine which interval is the shortest without painstakingly calculating every single TBA individually? That would imply 19 times more work in this case, and sure, we could drop the number of strikes to say 5 instead of 20, but that is still a buttload of additional work that I'm just not prepared to do. I'm already up to, 10 pages of timecode conversions? And secondly, using just one interval necessitates that the angle of attack is exactly the same on both the start and end point of your measurement. This I figured to be quite impractical since bodies move around when you hit them. And we know from experience that swing manipulation has a huge impact on when an individual attack lands. It's the name of the game, after all. I just wasn't prepared to deal with that, so that's why I chose my method instead, where swing manipulation is at least negligible. But yes, do keep in mind that the method I used is in no way perfect, and the numbers in column H should be taken with a grain of salt. The biggest problem is of course that it is down to humans' best ability, in this case mine, to achieve the fastest possible strike over and over without accidentally going a little too fast and triggering a combo, ruining the sequence completely. Replication studies are welcome should anyone feel so inclined. And so, getting back to the spreadsheet, we now have two similar but notably different columns that together hold one of the keys to answer our original question. What is the highest possible DPS for each attack in the game? For comboable non-stop weapons, the shortest TBA is in the left column, and for everything else, it is in the right one. So to combine these into one single list, we have column I, named shortest TBA. This one starts by looking at the F column to determine if the weapon is a hit stopper, and if true, it outputs the number in column H. But if the weapon is not a hit stopper, it then goes to column D and checks if the weapon has a combo windup. And if that is true, it outputs the combo TBA from column G instead. But if the weapon is neither a hit stopper nor has a combo windup, such as our beloved alternative grip halberd, then it outputs the empirically established value from column H. In short, the column displays the shortest TBA for each weapon, which is what we're ultimately interested in. And now we can just list all the damage values for the weapons. These you'll find in column J to L. I chose to go for just tier 3 armor for now, since it's arguably the most relevant, and I wanted to keep the spreadsheet tidy. But adding more in the future should be pretty quick. And now finally, what all this has been building towards. Our DPS values displayed from column M to O. Simply the damage values divided by the shortest TBA. So now you might be curious to see which one is the winner, and for that all we need to do is sort this column from C to A. And lo and behold, the Maul strike is in the top for tier 3 head. This may or may not come as a surprise to you. I actually was a little surprised, had a sneaking suspicion the Bardiche strike would top this list, but I clearly underestimated the TBA for them all, and quite frankly all the hit stoppers. Just look how they stack up in the top. We don't even find a non-stopper in this category until we get to the 13th place. Part of the explanation is of course that we are looking at just tier 3 armor, which the blunt hit stoppers are particularly effective against. Including lighter armor as well in this table would change that distribution. But yes, the Maul is, by quite a margin, the highest DPS weapon against tier 3 armor. At the very bottom we have the Cleaver Thrust instead. With its meekly 1.8 damage per second, this little sucker would take close to a minute of unbroken attacks to murder an opponent by the ankle. Another point of interest from this test, and what was actually the most interesting discovery to me personally, is that the hit stoppers are, probably, the only weapons with an attack angle dependent continuous DPS. I mean, we all know swing manipulation affects DPS over the short term, in the sense that you can combine a drag with an axle to land 2 hits in quick succession. But I always thought that that balanced out once you got to the next attack, which would then have been an equal amount slower that the previous was faster by. And that is still the case for most weapons, but hit stoppers are exempt from this rule. And you can see exactly what I'm talking about on page 2 in this sheet. I didn't do too much testing to back this up. Only went through 5 hit stoppers and 5 no combo non-stoppers to test this theory. But I am fairly confident that the no combo non-stoppers behave the same way as comboable non-stoppers in this respect. And if that's true, the fact that I didn't include any of the latter shouldn't be a problem. At least for the weapons I tested, the result is very clear that there is a DPS difference between full extension drag and max acceleration on the hit stoppers, while there is no difference on the non-stoppers. The absolute values I wouldn't pay too much attention to, because testing minimum TBA for full extension drags is really impractical, and there's probably a lot of error involved. But we do see a difference of around 280 milliseconds between max axle and diesel for all the hit stoppers, which equates to a decrease of 19 to 25%. While the other weapons show no difference at all, really. The implication this has for the bigger TBA test I conducted is the importance of accelerating fully on the hit stoppers during the test. which I am happy to say I at least tried to do, so there shouldn't be too much of a problem there. But it is interesting just how different the hit stoppers behave to everyone else, in more ways than one. Now in the final 3 columns I chose to have a little fun and calculated the distance DPS for thrust attacks, since they can at least reasonably be thought of as linear, even if they technically aren't completely. Simply a combination of DPS capacity and weapon length, expressed in health point meters per second. So if we now sort this one from Z to A, we instead find the spear in the top position, due to its superior length. The S-Talk also does very well in this category, that precious little thing. I can imagine a handful other interesting combinations to add to this sheet in the future, but this feels like a good starting point and will at least conclude this video. So thanks for watching. If anyone's made it this far, Burkus out.